Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Race Code War, the Power of Words, Images, and Symbols on the Black Psyche by Kyrie and Aharo. This is our study on Chapter 2, Speaking in Code, and many look, few will see. So I believe the beginning of this chapter is very significant in introducing us to code, or to the folks who may not be familiar with codes and code talking and how the entire planet and world operates on codes. I'm going to read a bit from page 15 because Mr. Kyrie and Harold does an excellent job at explaining codes. And on page 15, he states, codes are also used in more public ways to establish standards and regulate public and private conduct, or rules of the game, or rules of the game have become oh my bad. Codes are used in more public ways to establish standards and regulate public and private conduct, comportment, and social interaction. The standardized codes of conduct or rules of the game have become the Bible for what is acceptable or legal and what is unacceptable or illegal. Standards of codes and norms of social interaction are written in a coded format. When new legislation is passed that amends, reinterprets, or abolishes an existing standard of behavior, it is a revision or a revised code. Law schools train attorneys to understand the standards and codes. They are taught to understand how to decipher the meanings and intent of a law. Legal language is not classified as a secret form of communication. However, it is a codified way of thinking, writing, speaking, and behavior. According to the Webster's New Coagulate Dictionary, the definition of a code and some of its applications are as follows. Code, a system of signals for communication, a system of symbols as letters, numbers, or words used to represent assigned and often secret meanings. And it is also code book, a book containing an alphabetical list of words or expressions with their code group equivalents for use in secret communications. Code word, a code name or code group. Code name, a word to serve as a code designation and codify to reduce, classify, and systemize, which is the last part. The last one is what we all should be attempting to do with our thought, speech, and behavior, codify it against the war being waged against us. And he also gives a bunch of examples of codes. Like, for example, we have codes of conduct that you will find in schools, for example, and policy codes in the workplace as well, plantation place, legislative codes that you will find. I think our law consists of these: sales codes, tax codes, bank account codes, military codes, cloak and dagger codes, which are espionage, like hidden from us, usually taking place in the government area. And those are called intelligence codes and spy operations. And the final part I'm going to read is covert codes, which Kyrie writes covert codes are, this is from page 17, covert codes are crafted forms of linguistic communication used in secret, concealed, or deceptive activities. They are part of a deceptive language pattern used often in intelligence, economic, or military espionage operation. Code language is indispensable and is very important to the success or failure of a mission. A code word has a purposely disguised intention that is recognized by the people trained to decode its meaning. Coded language is protected and shielded because it uses common words that are part of everyday conversation. Some covert codes are wrapped in language familiar in certain industries, professions, or activities. String words are also minimized so that no unintended signals or special alert are given to the opposition. Um, this reminds me of the Declassified document we read, Simple Sabotage, written by the CIA or some agency prior to the CIA. Anywho, one of their codes is to stop discussing things when the opposition comes into the room, and that is an example of how the code, racist code, and racist behavior is hidden, always hidden in plain sight. And I really appreciate the subtitle of chapter 2, breaking the code, many look, few will see, because that is very correct. And I'm going to be showing an example of I guess we can describe them as media codes, or aka how white people talk to us and to like the population using its own codes. How news is delivered, I suspect, is a form of code meant to cause us to remain docile or to remain confused and inactive, I suspect. So I'm gonna play that clip. But first, do we have any comments about what was read or about the first couple of pages in this chapter?
This is Kwaku. So you thank you for reading that. The thing about like this chapter and kind of the idea of code talking, I feel like it definitely is one of those things where it's hidden in plain sight. I recently, while reading this stuff, I've been trying to really look and pay attention to what things are being said, well, what people are saying, how they're saying it, and realizing that when he says that that this is apparent in many different industries, I think one industry for sure we can all, well, I hope we can all agree on, or I agree. I think that this is happening a lot, is kind of like the music industry. Now I said before I don't watch The Breakfast Club, but today, YouTube auto played it, and it was one with Lil Nas X. So I was like, all right, let me put this to work. Let me listen to this, see if I can find anything. And to me, the entire time they were speaking in code. There's a certain way that people are going to ask you questions, a certain way that you have to answer those questions. I mean, they made a comment about the Cosby Show, and it's like, can we like say that we like the Cosby Show? And for me, that's an example of a code, right? There's certain things that you can't say or can't. There's things that you can say and things that you cannot say. So I think it's definitely one of those things that's in plain sight. I think it's just for us as Black people, myself, we just don't realize it, that people are talking in code all of the time. That's it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Those are excellent points. It reminds me of how Black people definitely are on some levels aware that we use code, because we sometimes call it like code switching or code swapping, or code speaking, when we have to change our combinations of words and maybe our tone to appease white people when we're seeking plantation jobs and whatnot. But yeah, I think especially in that area, the so-called Breakfast Club, they are definitely speaking in code, because they must. I doubt they can share their authentic thoughts and still be allowed to have that platform. So they must, of course, speak in the code and toe that line, I suspect. I'm gonna share this clip because we should all be aware of how this concept called the media, which is just white people telling us what to think, do, say to each other, to regurgitate this stuff. So I think this is a great example, and shout out to the I suspect white people who compiled this, because I think this is an example of how the news delivers racism in plain sight, and also code. It's a very sophisticated code that they have been using against the population for a very long time. And with this example, it should be very evident, I think, but I may be incorrect. I may be just a highly deranged, insane victim of racism, white supremacy. Let's see it.
Some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 All right, I think we may get it. I don't want to get kicked off the tube again, but I think we may get the example of how they all use a shared combination of words to get their coded messages across, and any threat to so-called democracy is just a threat to white supremacy. That code broken down to its core. Whenever one person hears a threat to democracy or anything like that, I suspect they're talking about a threat to the system of white supremacy. Any comments?
Wow, that video was astonishing. I think I've seen it before, but I didn't see the number of news people that had that exact script. And the thing is that it's obvious that they probably get some version of the same script and they probably change it around. But I guess in this one instance, they didn't change it. And so it just all ended up exactly the same. And it was about fake news too. Think about the irony of that these people are reporting on fake news while given a script about it. It's very interesting.
Yes, the masters of deceit have turned so-called fake news. They could really put this label on whatever they want and call it fake news when they have historically only spewed lies, falsehoods, and incorrect information in order to keep the victims of racism and white supremacy highly confused in order to keep white people in charge, I suspect. So yeah, and this is racism hidden in plain sight, because how many people watch the news and do not even have the thought that racism, the system of white supremacy, is very much alive, and what they're seeing is racism, white supremacy. Very few people watch news and have that in their brain computer, so they're just being brain trashed further by being exposed to what people often call media, but I think I'd like to describe it as just white people telling us what to think, speak, and do. Are there any more comments? Folks want to share notes from what they read?
Yes, I would like to share on the first page on 15. A few notes here that I have when I was reading it is one of the questions, like, what are codes that you see often? And that's just like something for me to think about as I was reading through this. It's like, what are codes that I often see that are like, those are questionable. And then also thinking about maybe codes that we use like white supremacy codes that we use and we don't really understand them, but we're using them because it's like, oh, it's a social norm, or it's a like a common phrase that we use all the time. And it's just like we always say, I'm trying to think of one right now, but it's not coming to me. But I know you have a few common phrases that maybe we all say or we used to say or whatever. You hear frequently. And I think those could be also used as everyday codes, but no one really notices them because we don't really understand what the phrase really means. And then also the other code thing that I was thinking about was the emojis, like how emojis are now like very popular and everyone uses them. And there's some emojis you're like, oh, I know what that means, but it's not really saying it. So I'm pretty sure that that's ways that white supremacy uses codes throughout their text as well, especially if it's in a social platform. They're like, oh, let me just throw a few emojis out there because no one can really make up what it says, but the one it's targeted to.
I think something that I noticed that I don't know if it completely answers your question, but I remember the other day I was watching something about like a US military officer who I think they killed like 7 children in a drone strike or something. And then in the media conference, he said it was a mistake. And I was like, oh, this is code for like, we will not have any repercussions for this and you should not expect us to. So that was something that I picked up on.
I have an example too. I've been taking this course, and a lot of times the way that they speak about like everyday situations, for instance, like how like thinking about bank, it's about risk. So basically, companies going and trying to understand whether this is a risk they should take or not, and a lot of times when they're speaking about people, right? Because those are the resources, those are the things that they're trying to obtain. The way that they talk about it, it's almost they don't kind of like personify it, so they won't give it any kind of like personal traits or anything. It's just like talking about items, and I think that is like a coded way of speaking, and it's trying to get you, the person who's consuming it, to also think and speak that way in like that kind of code. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and for my little example, I'll just use the word dark that you can still find being used as code to mean black is bad. And I myself, when I was highly confused and just highly niggerized, it's still niggerized, but not as highly as I used to be. I used to use the word dark all the time in only a negative way. You know, something bad would happen amongst myself and my associates, and we would say, "Yeah, that's dark," you know, laugh it off, you know, say, "Yeah, that's dark." So that's a code that Black people, non-white people, white people like use traditionally, the word dark and that way. And that's just a small example of the code word. Hope that kind of tackles the question. Any more comments on the book or related to the question?
I did have a quick thought. Someone brought up just a little while ago the emojis now being used as communication symbols, and that just made me think of hieroglyphs. And at one time, they were considered, I guess you would say, antique emojis. So that was interesting how symbols are now being used to communicate once again.
Oh, can I be heard?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I was going to say one phrase you could probably add is throwing shade. I think that's one that might come up occasionally, like you're throwing shade on a person.
Yeah, that is definitely code talk. My dad is where the whole shade room, the whole nigger room. That's definitely code. And what goes on in the shade room is victims of racism, talking about other victims of racism and our pitiful positions. So yeah, great one, Dan. And rate 1/0, yeah. In 2021, most certainly, technology, emojis are being used by white supremacists. I suspect the whole monkey emoji may be understood by most white supremacists to be the nigger emoji. Any amount of time on any white supremacist forums like Chimp Out, you will see various gifs and caricatures and wordings that are all coded to mean racist stuff. So the codes are apparent in all areas of people activity.
Yeah, I think too. I remember on the cows, they were talking about milk, right? A lot of white supremacists use milk as a code word because a lot of non-white people can't digest milk. A lot of them are lactose intolerant. So they somehow believe that they're like genetically superior. So they'll like use milk or milk emojis to represent like them as white supremacists.
Yeah, also milk being seen as pure, like pure white, very much so. And we just heard guys talk about this yesterday. Harambe, how Harambe was a whole like racist codes and signals surrounded by Harambe. I remember walking down Berkeley, like Telegraph, and seeing Harambe, like rest in peace Harambe, on the frat houses and banners and stuff. And that was all codes and signaling to to the population that white people still care about animals still care more about animals than Black people, non-white people, because Harambe got a lot of support, more support than Trayvon Martin for sure. But so another example of just how these codes manifest by white people and are used by white people. So I think this part right here on page 18 is also very, very significant in understanding codes and what they're used for. And I also we should also be aware of counter racist codification and counter racist language. I do appreciate Still Learning's input from the live chat. They say he or she, I don't know if it's a male or female, says a way of getting something done, NFJ. And yeah, that is also correct. Kyrie,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Smoky Damages.
Yeah, I was going to say, in relation to the clip that you played earlier as well, I was thinking, most people who are classified as white definitely know when they say things like threat to democracy or like phrases like all American. I think maybe at one, I was kind of looking at when I first started reading this second chapter, and I was thinking of things that can be looked upon as maybe sophisticated code words and non-sophisticated code words. And things like all American, I think maybe at some point they were looked upon as covert, but I think most people understand, even though it's still code, it's not very sophisticated. And I think usually most people, white and non-white, know when people say things like all American. We don't really have the equivalent over here. I haven't really heard anyone say like all English or anything like that, but I definitely have heard the phrase all American, and that usually does mean, or is understood in the minds of most people, white and non-white, that they mean white when they say all American, and threat to democracy means threat to the white way of life, or white supremacist way of life. And I was looking at probably thinking of more, how can I say, more sophisticated code words as well, or code phrases. Obviously, I think we've had, I think we covered it last week where we was talking about unconscious bias. So you've got like two words there, unconscious and bias, and on their own, they're, I don't know, innocuous and stuff. But then in conjunction unconscious and bias, then that kind of, and words like microaggression, again, on their own, micro and aggression, they just appear sort of innocuous, but actually when put together, it sort of shifts focus away from, you know, things that white people, in the case of unconscious bias, obviously it just kind of takes you away from what white people actually do to maintain system of racism, white supremacy. And I think this is kind of maybe in the refined stages of racism. This is where a lot of white people are at now, where the codes are a little more sophisticated. And I was thinking, it kind of posed a question in my mind where, you know, all white people are taught to have a racist code, I think, and I suspect, but then can they speak in code without realizing it? And I think maybe when they're a lot younger, they probably can, but then as they grow a little older, I think probably even teenagers, probably even before that, then they begin to realize that some of the things they're saying is definitely white supremacist code, things that further or maintain system of white supremacy, especially things like, obviously nigger is not really codified, is not really a code. I think that's kind of overt and stuff. Everyone knows that nigger is, I don't know, looked upon by a lot of people as quite offensive. But then now, in terms of a codified thing where it's not exactly sophisticated and not non-sophisticated, I'd say it's probably somewhere in the middle, where a white person now can say, I'll call you a nigger, but it's not really a nigger, right? I'll call you nigger in terms of N-I-G-G-A. And they say, oh no, I wouldn't actually call you a nigger as in N-I-G-G-E-R because, you know, that would be racist. So now they can call us a nigger to our face and say, well, I'm not using the hard ER, as I've heard a lot of suspected white supremacists say, but then they still use the word nigger and say, well, you know, it's not racist apparently. So, yeah.
Yeah, a masterful way of how they practice white supremacy is in that manner as well. And unfortunately, we do have victims who are victimized to that degree where they can be called nigga by a person classified as white, a person classified as black, and not react in a way to say, and in a codified way, but to allow it and not understanding what's happening. We now have songs written by and performed by white people where they freely say nigga, and there's and around them and their videos there's a bunch of black people dancing around supporting them. So we have been degraded to such a degree where this is now a reality where a white supremacist can have a bunch of black males and females dancing around them while spewing rhymes about killing niggas and whatnot. So 2021 white supremacy has been highly refined and sophisticated, especially in area 3 entertainment, for sure. Thank you, Mr. Smoking Damages. Let's see.
Also,
oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. When you're thinking of the word nigga, actually, I can't remember, it was like Cal's episode we were listening to yesterday, and they had a conversation about the word nigger and nigga and who should use those words. So I think like also, it kind of made me think right now, like, oh, we're thinking about codes. And it's a constant, like this word is constantly in discussion about who should say this word and who shouldn't. And then those who, like say if someone says like, oh, only black people can say it, or no white people can say it, then white people are mad that they can't say it. So it's just like, it's almost like this weird, like, it's because you really want to say it, you know? So it's just like, just say that you want to say the word too, because it's like something that you used in the past and you want to continue using or whatever. It's the closest thing to saying nigger. So it's like, since I can't say nigger right now, I really want to say nigga, so I can use it since you use it or whatever it is. But I think it's just very interesting, like certain words that are always in discussion, especially the word like racism. I don't know why people are so confused about that term, but it's always in discussion. And then it's almost like people don't want to tell the truth about how they really feel about a certain word. So it's just very interesting that some of these words keep coming up, especially all American. It's like, oh, well, we said Americans, everyone's included. But is everyone really included? Like, is that really your intentions when you use that word? So yeah, just things to I think about all the time.
I think the word nigga, I think white people have such an attachment to it because it's a word that was flipped and now Black people use it because now they made up the word nigger, but when Black people twisted it and made nigga, it's a code word that they didn't make. So it feels like, okay, we didn't make this, we didn't use this slang, kind of, now we can't touch it. So they feel, how could I put it? They feel a way about it because it's a code that now that was not made from them specifically. It generated from them, but it's not specifically turned and made from them. So it's a code that they feel like they can't touch. So they feel kind of upset about that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I usually find that white people who use that word are definitely not confused about the fact that it is how can we say, a loaded and offensive word, right? That a lot of Black people find definitely do find offensive when it's used. But then a lot of Black people don't understand why we're angry about the word, right? Because it is a word. And I guess since we're using the word, since the word's being used, I guess probably a definition of the word is probably in order as well. I know Neely Fuller Jr. usually says the reason that that word has so much power and makes Black people so-called chimp out is because lots of Black people don't usually have a definition for the word, and Neely Fuller, I guess, says the definition of the word nigger is victim of racism, white supremacy. And I think maybe some Black people don't think of it like that, but a lot of white people definitely do think of the word like that, regardless of what spelling they use when they use it. I mean, my definition for the word nigger, which I have on my Instagram, is a mockingly accurate reminder for the status of Black people whilst under a system of racism, white supremacy. And why I say it's a mockingly accurate reminder is because Black people are niggers. Black people are subject to the system of racism, white supremacy. So if a white person refers to me as a nigger, it is accurate, but it is definitely offensive because it's a mocking reminder of our status. Just because a white person doesn't call you a nigger doesn't mean that you're not subject to the system of racism, white supremacy. So I say it's the same thing as saying, like, I don't know, a person who's disabled, you call that, there are many ways to describe a disabled person. You can describe that disabled person as, I don't know, a cripple or a handicapped person, whoever. That disabled person might find it really offensive if you mock their condition. But then if you refer to them as a disabled person, most disabled people probably won't find that offensive. Just like we can think of really, really offensive ways to describe someone who's overweight. We can call them fatty, we can call them all different types of things, but those are mocking reminders of their status. Whether you call them something nice or bad doesn't actually change the status of the person. So nigger, unfortunately, I wish it wasn't an accurate term, but it is accurate. The only thing that makes it offensive is because it's a mocking reminder.
I highly appreciate the logic and you sharing. Right. Yep. Any others like to share?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on what Smoking Damages just said about, the N-word not having a definition, or many people using it without having a definition. And I think that that is a very interesting point. I think it has a lot to do with also, racism. A lot of Black people don't have a definition for racism. And I think that is definitely why there's so much confusion around the two words about who can say it who's not supposed to be, who's not supposed to say it. And so I just thought that was very interesting, and I think that that's a fantastic point.
Yeah, and a lot of what smoking damages, what Carrie said. Yeah, there's Black people really don't really throw out definitions for the words they're using, especially when they use the word nigga. So I think when white people use this word nigga, whether they're using it jokingly or whether they're using it with us, they have it somewhere in the back of their mind that, look, we've made them niggas and they like it. They're enjoying it. They enjoy, calling themselves niggas and then, saying, oh, nigga means proud to be Black, like anyone should be proud to be a victim of racism, or should be proud of things that we had nothing to do with. So it's really interesting. This word, this very versatile code word, which I think the best application for it is smoking damages definition. That should be that's the necessary reminder we all need to stay focused on solving this incorrect problem called racism and white supremacy.
Yes, I wanted to add as well to that. I think that when white people use that word, it's much like the system of racism. No matter the context, it's referring to somebody as a slave, pretty much, right? A victim of racism, a slave. So it's much like the system of racism. Like no matter where you are on the planet, as when a white person calls you a nigga, they're calling you a slave. That's I guess my opinion. Or it could be I could be incorrect.
Yeah, I think you may be onto something. And I also that thinking makes me believe that when victims of racism are rapping, or when any person is rapping and they're saying they kill niggas, they rob niggas, what is really being said is that I further harm non-white people, I further harm Black people who are already victims of racism, I further victimize a powerless group of people, which is when we really begin to understand the power of words, we really begin to understand how degraded we've been made, because Area 3 is so popular and well invested in by non-white people, especially Black people. But every time we step into that area, we just get bombarded with codes and messages that says to mistreat one another. So something to think about.
Yeah, I wanted to add my 2 cents to the N-word discussion. I agree with everything that has been said, especially what Mr. Kwaku just said about sorry, I'm gonna echo. Hold on. Ray, please go.
You hear, Ray?
Oh, yes, sir. I was just adding that the use of the N-word, whether it be nigger or nigga, the white supremacists, it seems to me, as skillful as they are in their use of deceit, in my opinion, have not figured out how to make a large number of Black people once again being comfortable or accepting them calling us that. And we're not comfortable with that also, because once we are comfortable with that, then that just seals the fact that we are still in the system of white supremacy, and we do everything as a collective in order to not come to that realization. So just that one word is very powerful and can be very deceptive, if you're looking at it in the incorrect context.
Yeah, I think a lot of Black people are kind of open to the idea of being called the N-word by anybody now, especially with the 8th area of people activity, entertainment, being geared towards the acceptance of non-white
It's a third area. I think it's at 8, but it's a third area.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, the third area of people activity entertainment. People being kind of geared towards saying the N-word and encouraged to say the N-word, especially if they're a non-white, non-black. And I have loads of screenshots on my phone of Mexicans and people classified as Mexican who are just non-white people. Saying the N-word, recording themselves saying the N-word. I've been in public spaces where Black people are being called the N-word by, people who are classified as non-white. They may belong to the Indian or Asian populations or Spanish-speaking populations, but nonetheless, there's also loads of famous entertainers who are non-white, non-black, and they use that word quite frequently in their music. I think that also plays a major role in conditioning non-white, non-black people to calling Black people the N-word. I think regardless of who's saying it, if they are a non-black person, it should be taken as a racial slur. It should be considered the word nigger, even though nigger and nigger mean the exact same thing. Just wanted to add that to the discussion. But I don't think Black people are aware of the effects of that word, because it seems like they are happily being calling each other's niggas and allowing other people to call them niggas as well.
You can't basically say you hate this nigga, I'm gonna kill this nigga, I'm gonna rob this nigga, and then say I care about this nigga, this my nigga. It just don't make the same sense. It's like you're contradicting the word, basically. You're contradicting yourself.
Your brain computer doesn't compute.
Yeah, and that's an example of how we adopt the hypocritical nature of the enemy of white supremacists who have no problem, living a life of hypocrisies, but it takes a toll on the Black brain computer, and yeah, that's correct. Thanks for sharing that, Carice. That was really well put. So
I think it's really interesting how. Sorry to interrupt. I think it's quite interesting how the word is used by other people as well, other people who are not Black. So that's white people and other non-white people who aren't classified as Black. The way that they use the word among themselves, like if they're using it in the codified, the one where they've kind of made the word sort of acceptable for us to call it, us to call ourselves the word nigger, and for themselves to use it among themselves as well, the N-I-G-G-A, so to speak, the kind of codified one. But now when you're saying it, when they are saying it in order to insult somebody, in terms of if you're going to call someone you dirty nigger or something like that, I think it's interesting how white people and these other non-white groups they don't usually refer to themselves in an angry way using the word nigger, like the traditional form of the word nigger, as in N-I-G-G-E-R, right? And white people especially, who I guess are still in control just about on the planet, they don't usually refer, I don't think, so maybe they do, but most of the time I see that they don't refer to, say, Chinese people as niggers. They don't refer to Indian people as niggers. I don't think they refer to Spanish people most of the time, or Hispanic people most of the time, as niggers either. But they, white people and other non-white groups, definitely do refer to Black people as niggers. So I suspect that everyone on the planet, including Black people, knows who's the most affected and the most dominated and mistreated by the system of racism, white supremacy. So I think it's quite telling how other people use that word specifically against Black people out of all other non-white people.
Thank you, Mr. Damages. That is an excellent point, and it reminds me of that nigga is definitely a universal code. This is a universal code that it seems that people classified as not Black seem to get it. And it reminds me, the first time I was called not only a nigger, but a nigger monkey, a combination of the two. I was called a nigger monkey was by a person classified as Mexican, I believe, and he was a much older victim. So yeah, everyone seems to be aware that Black people are at the bottom of the barrel, bottom of the social ladder, bottom of society, but it seems that we're not getting the help we need to solve this problem, which is a tragic reminder and a necessary reminder as well that Black people have no friends, no allies, and in the form of so-called brown communities, our yellow communities, we seem to be left to our own devices to solve this problem because we've been begging for help for hundreds of years. It seems that everyone has chosen or has been so victimized that they've I don't know, chosen the white side. I may be incorrect, perhaps, but victims of racism, non-white people across the globe of all classifications should be trying to solve this problem, not just Black people. It's yeah, there you go. There you go.
Another term that I used to use that I no longer use, trash. I used to use the term trash a lot, and that definitely has negative connotations. And also, when you read this book, pay attention to advertisement. It's not only the images, but the words that are used that are very important. And this book will help you, or at least it helped me. And it helped me to decipher and look at things differently. I'm like, pay attention more to advertisement. Something else, the maintenance people on the plantation that I work at, I know they're all white males, white men. And instead of using the N-word nigger, I've noticed that they call themselves brother. And when they're talking to other non-white Black males, they will refer to them as brothers. A few of them, not all of them, but a few of them. And I think that takes the place of nigger. It's more acceptable to say brother in public. That's all I have for now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I just add to that really quickly? That was a great point, the word brother. Also, I hear, what is it called? What's up, boss? Like people call each other boss. That was just something that came up too in my head, just to add.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. B. I'd like to read from the chat from Rate This Record. He said something, well, this person, I don't know if they're male or female, said something really interesting. They say, the N-word is a fighting word. Unfortunately, the last time someone called me this word, I had to become physical. I am too old to do this again. I literally pray I am not called the N-word again. Suggestion, I would advise to begin to understand the system of racism and white supremacy, what it is and how it works, so that when you are called the N-word, you have developed a code of behavior, so you know what to do when you're called the N-word, instead of having to rely on prayer that may or may not help you to behave in a way that will be constructive if you are called the N-word again. But I think that this is a very good example of why we should learn about racism and white supremacy, so we could understand the importance of developing a counter-racist code, because responding to the N-word in a hostile, aggressive way is their plan. That is the conditioning we've been given. But if we understand that, if we do not operate on racist logic, it's operating on racist logic to respond in that manner of being called the N-word. But if we operate on counter-racist logic, we will know just what to do if that happens. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept, you can find that on producejustice.com, the best place to start. Also counterracism.com.
I can't respond to like people using the N-word towards me, but something that helped me was, I got it from 05, where he was basically like, if other people who are not Black want to use that word, then they're just saying that they're niggers. And if you want to be a nigger, like just join, then you're a nigger. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're setting yourself up to be like us, like at the bottom of the boat, then so be it. That's who you want to be.
Yeah, am I confusion? Am I when I was not too long ago, a couple of years ago, I used to also want to fight people over calling me the N-word. I've gotten many altercations involving so-called Mexicans saying the N-word or stuff like that. And I was realized, wow, there's nothing good or cool about being a nigga or a nigger. So if victims of racism want to be niggers, they want to be they want to be classified as a nigga / nigger, then be my guest. If they welcome that mistreatment and that imagery placed on them, then that's their decision, their demise.
Yeah, I wanted to share that. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only non-white Black male who has kind of have to use a defense mechanism when it comes to the N-word, because it's geared to be antagonistic and dehumanizing. So for me, I had to, after being called nigger so many times by Mexicans and other non-white people, and also white people, which is rare, which is very rare. If it's a non-white person, I just ask them, "Are you Black?" And they'll say no, and then I'll just continue asking questions about the use of the N-word. And for me, white people, if a white person calls me nigger to my face, my reactions have been not the best. I don't quote unquote chimp out, but I definitely do make it a mission of mine to ensure that I can do something to the white person so they wouldn't call me or anyone the N-word again. But now I'm thinking about it, I'm pretty sure that my tactics probably don't work, because it's in their DNA to continue to call Black people the N-word and also just practice racism, white supremacy. So for me now, I just don't care. Like I expect to be called nigger. I'm classified as Black, which means I'm classified as a nigger. The word Black and nigger are like, you can't separate the two, because that's how this language works. Like that's how this code of words work. Everything means everything. Black always means nigger. Black always means bad, and Black always means whack. And white always means good. It always means pure. Just because you're not saying those words in association, it always means those things subconsciously / and or consciously. I believe so. For me, it's like, call me a nigger to my face. I'll question you about it, but I'm not gonna chimp out because I expect you to call me that, and much more, way more frequently and often. So I'm actually surprised when I get home from a long day and I haven't been called a nigger.
I totally agree, and I'll just like to add as well, just my last word on this, on the word nigger. The last time I was called a nigger, I had absolutely no reaction whatsoever. If a white person wants to call me nigger, they can just call me nigger as many times as they like. They can't pay me to give any kind of reaction, depending on what mood I'm in and the setting. Maybe I might have questions, but I've questioned so many white people about that word nigger down through the years. I've got really hardly no questions for them at all now if I hear the word nigger from out the mouth of a white person. Because the reason is because they already treat me like a nigger, right? I'm already being treated by them like a nigger by the whole system of racism, white supremacy. So whether they call me a nigger or they don't call me it, that's my status in a system of racism, white supremacy. So that's just how I advise like people that I know, non-white people, Black people, to deal with that. Don't get angry about it. You're already being treated like that. You don't have to like the word, but I'd say just don't if you can, just react to it and just decide that you're going to react in that way as a non-reaction, and that will just be your code just because you decided that that's what you're going to do.
Codification 101. Thank you, Smoky Damages. I'm going to read from page 18, furthering, because this is very significant portion of the text. And Mr. Eniharo states, among the easiest ways to hide a message are with the use of reshuffle letters, one or two discoveries, alternative sound or read-alike words, near spellings and word associations that are woven within the body of the slogan. The reshuffle letters may start with the first letter in each word of a slogan or a title of presentation. If these letters are arranged in a certain fashion, they could spell out a word or give a signal for an action. The one or two word spellings that are discovered in the slogan or speech often trigger a mechanism to create within an individual a certain mental or emotional response. The discovery of one word does not necessarily imply that there is a hidden message unless it is found to be a coded reference to activate something. The technique of alternative words require that a word be purposely placed so that it most likely has a double or triple meaning. And this may seem a bit complicated to folks, but perhaps the example of Donald Trump's presidential run and his slogans, make America great again. You know, just those four words were able to awaken or revitalize something within the white psyche, within the white existence, that got the number of white supremacist groups to grow. And we got the Proud Boys, we got the Boogaloo Boys, we got the 33%ers. We got a ton of new groups that emerged from his presidency. And combining this text with the ISIS paper, we can be reminded of the word America being an anagram for I am race, so that slogan, make America great again, and combining with America meaning race being I am race, it could possibly be like a white call, a white calling, a white dog whistle, as the media likes to call it, to harken back to go back to the old days where, you could go out and harm a Black person, mistreat non-white people overtly, and it was all fun and games, and we saw when Trump was in office, we did see his hat and his Trump sign become very, very hand in hand with Confederate flags, and neo-Nazi and Nazi imagery and symbols and whatnot. So codes are very, very powerful, as we've seen with white supremacist Donald Trump and the people that he revitalized with his blonde hair and his being a racist, essentially, basically. But I hope that made sense. Make America great again. When has America ever been great? When it was erasing, eliminating, genociding the natives, the Native Americans, so they could take their land and occupy it, or was it when they were benefiting and producing so much economic growth through the rape and enslavement of Black people for about 400, 500 years? So has America ever been great? Was that a code? Were they code signaling to one another? I suspect it was. And that's just a small example of the many codes that are thrown out here that white people pick up on and act on. Maybe incorrect, maybe in error. Thoughts, comments?
This whole chapter opened my eyes up to just how Like, if they are intentional about having these slogans and these anagrams hidden in these words, basically, then they've done a really good job at putting together everything. It seems like, because when I was reading the slogans and quotes from speeches and sentences, it seems like it's all very much coded, and it made me think of the film They Live, where the character puts on those sunglasses and gets to see what things really mean. I feel like this book is allowing me to understand that every slogan, everything that's projected onto into the consciousness of the mass media culture is always going to be pretty much anti-Black and loaded with the N-word, loaded with messages of Black inferiority and white superiority. And I was surprised that the America didn't come up, the I am race thing didn't come up, because so many others came up in chapter 2.
Thank you, Mr. Sir. Any more comments, questions?
Yeah, for me, this section in particular, is it really reminds me, I think I mentioned it at the last meeting, but reminds me of the ISIS papers, understanding symbols, because some of the like slogans, the words that he's picking out of there, some of them, may seem, at least to me, like you're like kind of like reaching, but I think in the long term, just like when it finally starts to come together, because I'm already seeing like some of these words that are coming out of these slogans and these anagrams, right? But I think right now it's still kind of a new concept and a new idea. So I feel at times he could be reaching with some of the words that he's getting from the slogans. One thing too that I did notice, I guess on 24, top of 25, kind of like the where the slogan says "Let your fingers do the walking," and then on the top of 25 it says, "This came out in 1964 under the brand name of Yellow Pages. The commercial was broadcast during the height of the civil rights movement." I thought that was interesting. It kind of gives like a look, like this. I guess this practice where these slogans arise from like certain movements, certain times. I guess this is like this is something that the white supremacists has been doing for a very long time. The usual tactic. Because I would have just thought, maybe this just came around when TVs were coming out, or not even when TVs were coming out, but later on in the years, like in the 90s. But I think that this has definitely been going on a lot longer than I realized.
Hello. Yeah, I was going to say on page 18, the paragraph before the last one, where I underlined it, where the author says, to give the benefit of the doubt, it is possible that the hidden spellings and words may have been an accident or an unintended outcome. However, the developers of slogans know or should know what other spellings or words are hidden within their work. And the question I had there was, why should they know if it wasn't intended? So so if you do have words and phrases like he has on the following pages, if you can actually find different types of words simply by looking at a phrase, like you can find anagrams, etc., and you can just do word associations, etc. I think probably the psychological impact of being victimized by a whole system of racism, white supremacy, you are going to be taking that mindset of yours, or I would be probably, of looking looking at a slogan or looking at a couple of words, and then I probably will be able to find quite a few racist things in there if I was so inclined to find that, right? But it wouldn't necessarily mean that there was an intended racist code within those slogans. I mean, in his own words, he says it may have been an accident or an unintended outcome, right? So I think so on page 19, where he has a racial anagram with the following spelling, neighbor, and then he picks out Negor, right? And then obviously spelling the word Negro. Now, is that an intended code or not intended code, right? Is that word Negro, was that intended to be in the word neighbor or not intended? I mean, for me, it's not clear, and I don't even know if that's an example of racist code being hidden in plain sight. I've got no idea, actually. I'm quite confused about that part.
Yeah, I also admit I was not fully gathering the word associations and the racial anagrams, but as I think about how white people like use the word, like good neighbors and bad neighbors, and you know, love thy neighbor, that sort of thing, I can understand how the word has been coded to sometimes mean non-white. And the word associations found here on page 20, which says word associations and the spelling of good, like good equals honorable, esteem, bad, ugly, pretty, dog equals chase after, chase away, guard, cat, obedience, friendship, do equals sex, work, play, and perform, go equals active, travel, proceed, and depart. And so I guess we have to understand word. I don't know, it's hard to understand word association in the way he's trying to get it, but I think I've managed to kind of understand that. For example, the word associations around the word associations are more word associations, more word associations, speech impediment coming out around the word good. For example, like, you know, dogs are often seen as good because they're obedient. You know, cats kind of have a bad rep because, you know, they probably don't listen, they're not obedient. So that's why we often hear about bad luck cats and good dogs. So I kind of guess that's where the word associations come from, and also the word dark and shade that we mentioned earlier. Those are word associations that the average person will associate with Black people, and also a bunch of negative stuff as well. But a lot of the decodings, I admit, did go over my head. Perhaps I'm not that skilled in the code breaking, but I think I was able to understand it more when got to page 21, where he attempts to decode this President Bush slogan when he used axis of evil, because the first decodes are, or decodification of hidden spellings and words. The first ones are axe, which is the beginning of axis, which means to chop. Axis, it's supposed to remind people of Nazi Germany, Axis power, or Hitler-like. And then because in that time that was evolving, like the whole 9/11 and the whole they were arranging the concept of the Middle East, people are supposed to think of oil or whatnot. So I think the words are supposed to produce thoughts amongst people that involve, you know, maintaining the system. You know, if oil is what white people have to go out and get more of. You know, oil was a very popular topic around 9/11, you know, and a lot of people, even the average person, understands that oil has something to do with you know, going into Iraq and whatnot. But I may be in error in my understanding of these decodings, but
I think something for me that it's hard to kind of, like, I agree with Quickly, like, I found some of it, like, maybe it was a reach, because, I mean, there's only 26 letters in the alphabet. So ultimately, any word, you're gonna find words in it, unintentional or not. Like, I don't know, when I listen to, I prefer like Bobby Hemmett, because Bobby Hemmett goes through like the history of a word and like how certain words came to be. And then he'll show like how they were associated based on the time that the word became a word. I don't know if that makes sense, but he'll be like, oh, the word like love or the word beauty comes from this, and it comes from like this sort of mythology, and this is like what they were referring to when they mean it. Or I think he does that with like romance and the Romans and stuff like that, and then he goes into the history of it, which kind of has implications for how we use the word now. Like that makes more sense to me in terms of word association than this one.
Yeah, I agree with what Ashley is saying in terms of going down to the etymology and the breakdown of a word. I think it's very important. Can I be heard? Sorry. Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. So, sorry. First of all, sorry to my associates here that of the time that in which I came into the meeting, I missed out on probably some really quality deciphering of this code. My nap overextended, but I'm happy that I can at least make it into the meeting, and I really enjoyed the short but sweet information that they gave in terms of the military codings and how that's been used, and depending on what field you study, whether it's law, psychology, or science, you are accustomed to a particular set of codes. But what you would find is that it always has some form of race relation. And I do think as well that some of them, like it was hard for me to like take everything without a grain of salt. I had to, I did think it was a reach, but in having some information, I don't know if you guys are familiar with like The Good Times. That was like a TV show in America back in the day. Consider like with a character like Archie, who was a racist guy who basically they made humor and fun out of him basically being irritated by every other race, and they would feature Black people who could bounce off of it. They had a show similar to that to the UK that was made from that, and it was called Love Thy Neighbor, and it was about basically it's a form of trying to improve race relations by showing a white family and a Black family living right next door to each other, and in an attempt to humanize, so it seems, the Black family by showing like their own family dynamics versus the white family dynamics, and them loving their neighbor and getting along. But the underlying tones of the show was definitely to allow the N-word to be expressed in a sense, and derogatory terms to be used, but obviously with that sense of humanization being counterbalanced. So it's not a far stretch to understand that maybe that is the anagram that comes out of neighbor in as a nigger, that coming out of the word neighbor. And the fact that there was a whole TV show that, you know, Europe, especially London, is so implicit with their own racism. They don't like to show it. They like to make it seem as if they're the most libertarian, like a most democratically civilized society. So having a show like that present still allowed them to have their underlying ways and little jokes like the BBC would do amongst their own crowd of people. Like the jokes that they will tell, you can tell they're highly codified for their own pleasure and amusement of Black derogatory language. And yeah, so I'm happy that I got to see it being used in this way, and it lets me know, although it's hard for me to fathom, I'm very sure that this is something that Europeans do. So maybe in the etymology of certain words, they will, because of its origin, use certain words today that we don't know probably does have its long-term standing in relation to Black. And I really do appreciate what Ashley said about Bobby Hemmett, because that I remember learning from somebody called, a lot of Moorish teachers, they teach etymology of words under the understanding of how to basically come through with the law aspects of why they are the natural assigned human beings to America versus white European Americans. And in that breakdown in etymology, a gentleman called Tariq Bey, Tariq Tariq, he talks about the word nigger and its origin, saying that it's actually rooted from the word triglycide, nigger. And triglycide is basically the species or the origin of European, from his teachings, is the origin of European bloodline. It's like a type of monkey that's almost like formed as a human in a sense. And when I had researched triglycide, I found posters that are like highly codified as to say, like the thinking man, that I think therefore I am, but as a triglycide. So that let me know that this is something they reverence and would have in their high society, whatever. But the reason why I'm saying all of this is because the word nigger being pushed on us in the way that it has is always a reflection of their own insecurities, in understanding that they are the original triglycide monkeys. They have pushed on the images of us being monkeys and having that origin and us being the niggers and left the triglycide aspect out of it. Because if they'd used a full sentence, would know that it's not in our DNA, that can easily be sussed out. But it's this constant reflection of allowing their children to have a chance of getting past a mental capacity of I'm worthless, because I feel like that's a mentality that they get to a certain extent, a point at their life when they realize their genetic survival is falling. Like just as how we awaken, how yes, they have lived a codified life, but the point of the rationality coming through that, oh wait, I've been raised to think that Black people are useless, but they are actually the superior race. Like having those words called nigger and them believing that we are monkeys and checking if we have tails in school from early years in the 80s and 90s, because a lot of our parents would say that they literally checked if we had tails because this is the education that they got. It's just, okay, maybe I've gone on for too long, but the point that I'm trying to make is that it's re-echoed those words and pushed onto us only on the basis that it keeps their own mental state going a bit longer, a bit more feeling like they are superior and in power. And it's a way to protect their children so until they get to that state. But yeah, I would leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, respond to something that Ms. Nebula has said. I agree. I do think them calling us the N-word gives them some type of power and also hides something. Because there's a lot of theories about what the N-word means. I personally believe the N-word means a dead person, a person who does not know who they are. But that's something I just learned from reading. It could be, and I just picked it up because I read it and I thought it was true. So I added it to my belief system. But I suspect Ms. Nebula is very correct about the N-word having like multiple uses. One to harm Black people, but also to hide further knowledge from Black people by, just sampling them as a nigger versus unpacking the word and finding the true historical roots of it.
I wanted to make a comment on something that Mary brought up about the TV shows, and I think that's one of the great ways, awesome ways that the system of white supremacy teaches codes to other white people. The show, I imagine the scene. I haven't seen that show, by the way, but I've seen many things like it. But we have a white and a Black family. The Black family will try and educate the white family on how you deal with Black people, and that's how Black people, most victims might see it. But then for white people, it's about refining the system, refining the practice of racism. Like, oh, if you say these things to Black people, you'll get this kind of reaction, or we're not doing that anymore. This is how we're practicing racism now. So it really is a testament to the awesome power of the system of racism, white supremacy, kind of what he was mentioning before early on in the book about receiving codes and images that Black people, non-white people, Black people will definitely receive a different set of images and meanings and symbols than white people will.
Thank you everyone for their input. I would say in regards to Kyrie and O'Hara's comments that he may be reaching. I don't know if that's the best combination of words to use, because victims of racism who have come before us, they have often warned us and communicated to us that white people's quote unquote forked tongue, they have been attempting to communicate that it's their language, it's the words that white people use, and perhaps the language has been so coded, and its origins is manifested in codes designed to take power from people who are not white. And this is what this language has been designed for from the beginning. So while victims may not understand, may not be able to see that, and the words that white people are using, I think we have been warned. So perhaps we're not understanding the how deep these words have been seeded with messages and other various meanings. So I don't know if it's correct to say that he is reaching. Perhaps we're just not unable to grasp the concept entirely, or perhaps he is in error. But just something I had to throw out there.
Yeah. When I was reading when I was decoding the words the slogans and things, I knew that it would take me I wouldn't pick it up immediately, but I knew what he was attempting to do was very constructive, and I think it's accurate. I just don't think personally I am at the level where I'm able to understand how it's done. I know he uses all the letters to make new terms and words, and then if it's misspelled, he'll correct them. I think that's I think it's very constructive. I think it's very, very to me accurate. My brain is not at that level where it's able to decode in that manner. I'm pretty sure, like reading Yurugu and reading ISIS papers, my brain will evolve throughout this process.
Understood. And I like to read. We have here on page 22. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself, which is a Roosevelt speech, and we have a long list of entities associated with that era of time, like Stalin, Tojo, Pearl Harbor, United States, the Allied forces and whatnot. But I'm gonna play out a little bit of the actual speech so we can just see how this speech is very, very coded and riddled with various messages that we may be able to decipher as we give it a listen. It is very hard to understand. So pay attention to the captions if you are unable to decipher it, because it is very hard to understand. It's a very old audio recording, I suspect. So let's see.
This is a day of national consecration, and I am certain that on this day my fellow Americans expect that on my induction into the presidency, I will address them with a candor and a decision which the present situation of our people impels. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. We face our common difficulties. They concern, thank God, only material things. The withered leaves of industrial enterprise lie on every side. farmers find no market for their produce, and the savings of many years in thousands of families are gone. More important, a host of unemployed citizens face the grim problem of existence, and an equally great number toil with little return. Only a foolish optimist can deny the dark realities of the moment. And yet we are stricken by no plague of locusts. Compared with the perils which our forefathers conquered, we have still much to be thankful for. Nature still offers her bounty, and human efforts have multiplied it. Plenty is at our doorstep. Practices of the unscrupulous money changers stand indicted in the court of public opinion, rejected by the hearts and minds of men. Yes, the money changers have fled from their high seats in the temple of our civilization.
All right, that's all I think we need to hear about that. The caption are not that accurate, and it's hard to hear everything he's saying, but I've heard enough to suspect that he is talking about white people maintaining during their tough times and remembering their great past of conquering and of establishing what they have at this very moment in time, which was 1933. So also fear, that whole concept of fear and how they use that word fear is very interesting as well. It seems that they have been able to project their fear into the establishment, expansion, maintenance, and refinement of the system of white supremacy. Any thoughts, comments from the text or from the speech?
I agree with sorry, was there someone else I want to speak?
Yeah, just really briefly.
Go.
I wanted to respond directly to the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. This is another example of white people speaking in coded languages and speaking. To me, this makes as a person classified as Black, it sounds very, very illusionary. Like it's like, to me, it's the illusion speak. The only thing of fear is the idea of fear itself, the manifestation of fear itself. And to me, I feel fear is code for non-white. I do really suspect that Roosevelt is talking about non-white people in that statement. And that's the thing that stuck out to me. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree with the author what he said on page 18 when he says these words, spellings, hidden spellings in these words may have been an accident or an unintended outcome. And I think I agree with that because there's quite a few, in terms of code words and hidden meanings in actual words and different connotations that white supremacists use words in, then I'm in complete agreement with the author there, where they do definitely use words that appear on the surface to mean something, and then the subtext, if you like, is something that is, that furthers the system of racism, white supremacy. In terms of anagram usage, in terms of looking at a word or a sentence and rearranging the letters to come up with different things, I'm just not really clear on that. For example, on page 20, when he rearranges that in the anagram, it says on page 20 where it says renew the spirit and manifest the energy, and the letters are rearranged to form RTSAMTE, which the author then says equals the word matters. If you rearrange those letters, you get the word matters. And then from that, he's extrapolated the message is race matters. Now, I think, like I said, I think these are kind of open to, I guess, open to interpretation, right? And I thought, let me just have a go at working and seeing like if I can get other words out from the same statement. So I looked on page 22 in view of the clip that you just played as well, and the words that he got out of the speech, where the phrase was used, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Now, obviously, he's extended, or how can I say, he's given a lot of latitude or room for movement in terms of words that can be letters in the words that can be rearranged, right? These anagrams. And then one of the words he's got here is AOLF, but then he's added the D and got Adolf Hitler from that one, right? But then, so I had a little go myself with the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And I found also no war. I was able to make no war from the slogan, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. I was also able to find forget war, also against the war is also there. If you rearrange those letters, you get against the war. You also have give in, which I guess is surrender or don't eliminate racism, white supremacy. I guess you could probably think that. And also, funny enough, I got because he did say you can substitute a letter for another one. So I substituted the letter N for the letter M, and I was able to make waste of time as well from the only thing we have to we have to fear is fear itself. It's interesting that waste of time is in there. Also on, let me see, on page 25, he's got make it a blockbuster night, and there's quite a few words that he's got out of make it a blockbuster night, but I got out of that, I got black is great, and I also got the word Nubian from there. So I'm not sure if I understand racist code words and subtext of racist code words, but in terms of rearranging letters, anagram style, I guess, is I'm not sure if that would just be open to the individual's interpretation. And as he says on page 18, these words may have been an accident or an unintended outcome. And I think I'm in agreement with the author there. I think probably the individual may see what they want to see. If you want to rearrange letters in a sentence.
Makes a lot of sense. Like, for example, the anagram, I am race, America, I am race. Perhaps the individual who came up with that, with the term, with the word America, perhaps he didn't have that that anagram in his mind, I am race, but he wanted to come up with a word that could mean that, that could mean the white race. So his brain computed America, and he didn't necessarily have it, but eventually the white people picked up on it that, oh, our country does mean our country name does mean I am race, just
it means a crime also.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to elaborate?
Oh no, I was just using those same letters. It's just not two ways. A crime.
Oh, yep. Mm-hmm. Yep, crime is in there. Yep. I am crime. The greatest crime ever committed. So on page 28, like the slogan and word associations, yeah, I was very confused with how he was coming up with them. This is why I would recommend everyone to get their own copy of Race Code War and to study this material to see to come up with your findings. But I came up with one. I tried to come up with word associations involving cigarette brands, and I said Newport. So Newports. Once upon a time, white people were well, first of all, Newports are smoked a lot by Black people. Like Black people have been trained and programmed to smoke Newports more than any other brand of cigarettes. And once upon a time, Black people were shipped across the country on boats and delivered to ports, various ports on new lands, on new concepts of land, and so like things that like things happen on the port. So perhaps Newport is harkening back to the slave, the chattel slavery industry, maybe. That was my attempt at conjuring word association with Newport. I think it makes sense. It definitely makes sense if you follow that particular logic that I use to come up with it. But just to for the folks who do not have the book, word associations from page 26. Word associations are words that can have hidden spellings or a spelling close to another word, or it can sound or read alike another word or phrase to make it a subtle or overt reference to people, things, places, and events. The following examples reveal other messages by using anagrams and their word associations. So I understood. I like this one, this word association that he mentions, that he uses here on page 27, because it made sense to me. And it says a diamond is forever, and he has man, dar or dark, ever equals eternal, die equals immortality, dead equals millions die in Africa or Africa, Afria equals South Africa, mines, millions die for diamonds and the mines of South Africa. And so diamonds, a diamond is forever. Could also possibly mean, Black people, victims of white supremacy, will be forced to mine these minerals known as diamonds and mines forever, as long as we are in a system of white supremacy. This one is probably easier to understand, is it easier to decipher and understand code phrase or slogan. And it says the ultimate driving machine. And there's a bunch of words here, decoded words and near spellings, which is NEGR equals Negro. Yeah, one should probably get the book to get a much clearer understanding of what Kyrie and the Herald is attempting to do here with the breaking down the codes. But just the slogan here, the ultimate driving machines, victims of racism should understand that non-white people have been made into automatons, like humans, subhumans, subhuman tools, basically. We are seen as equipment, like living equipment to be used by white people to help them to maintain the system of white supremacy. So we are often compared to machines. So the slogan here, the ultimate driving machine, could possibly be and is often paired with like the image of a jogging Black male, or the image of some sort of Black athlete, or something like that. Maybe the image of a Black car, that a Black male was driving. Anywho, the slogans, white people have done a masterful job, I suspect, at coding their entire vocabulary. And it's very, very rare that they will string together a combination of words that is not coded. But I may be in error. Those are all my notes. Folks have the notes to share before we get into closing comments. Please do so.
That last thing that you had just mentioned, how Black people, they would, I guess, basically alter the images. That reminded me of Color Monitors by Martin Kevorkian, and all of the things that he would talk about, how Nager and Terminator, just all the symbolisms, for Black people.
Understood. All right, I think we could get into closing comments. Would anyone like to begin?
Yeah, I don't really have much closing comments actually. I'd say I definitely agree with the part there. I underlined that part there is very constructive. A diamond is forever. I understand how he extrapolated what he said there, especially the part there where he says mines, millions die for diamonds in the mines of South Africa. Diamonds are forever, probably perhaps meaning that we'll forever dominate. It's probably the wish in the white supremacist minds that we'll forever dominate and mistreat Black people. So that makes a lot of sense to me. I think that part there was really constructive. And yeah, I think probably as I said before, where I think it's probably quite important for us to realize that some of, like as he says in the book as well, where he says some of these letters, some of these codes, especially in terms of anagrams and rearranging letters, the codes may not have actually been, it may not actually have been something that's deliberate in there. But if you want to find those things, you probably can as well with little effort. But that's what I got out of this chapter. But I mean, in terms of code words, in not anagrams, but in terms of code words and words having different meanings, yeah, I'm in agreement with Kari and Aharo. I think there's lots and lots of evidence to show that white people use codes and they have lots and lots of subtext with behind most of the things that they say.
Thank you for that really insightful closing comment. I think you just shared a wonderful closing comment. Other folks like to share a closing comment?
Yeah, I would like to share my closing comments, and it's a little bit about the decoding part when there was about the diamonds, like diamonds last a lifetime, something similar to that. When I was decoded, I just saw it as pure truth because I also it changed my perception of diamonds in general. Like people who wear diamonds are celebrating the death of Africans, and they're also celebrating the pillaging of the African continent. So that's why I got out of that particular statement. I think this book is really really constructive and powerful, meaning that it allows one to get more information out of text, language, and words. That's my closing comments.
Before we actually close off again, I may read what was said in this the live stream chat, because it's very interesting. And Rate This Record says, why don't white supremacists, racists admit that they are that? Trump supporter equals white supremacist, but deny such. And then Still Learning says, vampires don't cast reflection. And then Rate This Record says, mirrors force vampires to confront their nature of existence as an undead, which is why many vampires don't like mirrors. And I think understanding that vampires have been heavily coded as white people in media, something to think about. Very, very, very excellent exchange from the chat over on YouTube. Thank you. Any more closing comments?
Yeah, I think that was a fantastic breakdown. But what I really enjoyed about these two chapters, about this chapter in particular, code talking, and breaking the code is the fact that we have a breakdown, an understanding of, well, it has given me a breakdown and understanding of how, what and where to look for things. I've always noticed like the Sudoku and the crossword puzzles and the newspapers and the particular type of newspapers changes the type of words that you get. And of course, usually you'd say it was demographic, class, or who they are going for. But if you go to like a high standard, the Guardian, like the Evening Standard paper, there's certain words that you would pick up on that if you're depending on your class, you won't basically either be privy to the word or they wouldn't expect you to be. That's my assumption. But the point is, this has allowed me to now go in with further understanding on how to look for things and pay attention to slogans. And as I've been listening to lots of political speeches of the 1960s and 70s in the UK, as we had a lot of race riots then. And of course, it's highly codified and ways of removing the flack from the government by causing this race relations. But this is going to help me actually dissect and look further into what's actually being said into the words versus what's being read verbatim. I really enjoyed reading through those little statements and understanding the different areas that codes are done. The one sentence in particular, I wish I could find where it was. Maybe somebody could remember the fact that they say that the codes are updated and changed. And I think like through these movies, through certain political speeches that are given, the codes are there for the updated move of action. Like what is that statement that they were saying that's in counterbalance? It's just juxtapose hot girl summer. There's a statement that white males were using that is something season. Maybe it pertains to hunting season, but that statement that they made was highly, of course, we could easily break it down, but the code there is be reckless, murder as many Black people as possible, so, like just cause havoc, but within their own race wars. But that just can translate as, oh yeah, white guys are getting wild this summer. And that's highly dangerous for the fact that we can't get into a point in the community where they're codified is not even codified, is very highly recognizable. So I'm grateful to continue reading and get some more understanding on, combined with the ISIS papers, of how to further decode our environment and stay protected, safe, and find ways to create solutions.
Well said, Miss Nebula. That's it, sir. Any other folks would like to share? Fellow victims like to share?
For my closing comment, I found this book to be of constructive value, constructive use. I think one thing that I'm going to try and do this week is kind of go through some of the popular slogans and phrases and see how many words I can, take out of that, or see what I can find. Other than that, I am looking forward to the next discussion on the book. Maintain well.
Going back to the term neighbor, I think that the reason why I struggled with, because I also struggled when I saw that term, I was like, how do you get that from that? But when I was a child, I used to watch a program by the name of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and it's a white guy in a red sweater. And so I think that's why I'm struggling with what he got from Word, because I have this image of this white man. And one of the episodes, I just saw the clip not too long ago, Mr. Rogers, a white man, he washes the feet of a Black male. And I was like, oh, right there. Oh, that definitely put us to sleep right there. I'm listening to everybody. I'm definitely going to start playing the game Scrabble, and also playing a little game with the words that I see in advertisement all around town on the trains, buses, and everything, and see what I get from it. I didn't even think to do that while reading this book, which is amazing to me. I'm like, why didn't I think of doing that before? So so I thank you for an excellent business meeting, and that's all for now.
Thank you, Miss B. Any other fellow victims like to share closing comments before we?
I have a closing comment. This meeting was very constructive. It makes me look at the symbols and different words very differently, but it's hard because you know how when you get used to saying certain words, you try to get out that habit, but it's learning to unlearn the ways of how in which we use some words and seeing things in the sight that they are, instead of just kind of seeing them as hidden, but just very constructive and eye opener.
Thank you, Miss Carice. Mr. Ray1/0, would you like to share a closing comment?
Yes, this was a very constructive business meeting, and I'm looking forward to next week. 05. Good job, sir, in your endeavors to help the masses of non-white people alleviate their confusion.
Thank you. I believe that appreciation goes to all folks in this call, sharing their time and energy to discuss this content, this material that has proven to be material hard for victims of racism and white people to digest in a constructive manner. My closing comment is, you know, I see this this understanding of that white supremacy as a war against us, and words being the sole use of force against us in this war. One would like to think it's violence or indirect violence, but it's actually the words that they have been destroying our way since they've encountered us, and we have let these words remain not understood by us, I suspect. So I'm excited to actually have a text that decodes the various words and phrases white people use and have been using, because I think it's a valuable new tool in my tool set of understanding racism and white supremacy, what it is and how it works. And that's my closing comment. I hope it is was worthy of everyone's participation. I know it surely was of mine. And thanks you to Still Learning and Rate This Record and Asa Hotep from participating in the live stream chat. Very constructive words exchanged there. And with that being said, I'm gonna end it there.